what I'm really excited about is I have an opportunity to talk to one of the bright stars in the game, someone who I know does a lot of really great work in the Savannah area when it comes to sports and covering things nationally. From that post, she was recently named sports director at WJCL in Savannah. I am pleased to be joined by Amy Zimmer. Amy, thank you for joining me. I really do appreciate it.
You're welcome. Yeah, I'm so excited to talk some hoops. Right now here in Savannah, we're getting ready for a lot of golf coverage, so it's kind of nice to step aside for a minute here and talk about what's happening on the hardwood as we've got a ton of big matchups coming up that I am pumped for.
Absolutely, absolutely. And just a minute because we're talking here. We're podding. Did you ever like play basketball, or were you strictly, a volleyball type of girl?
It's funny. I actually basketball was my main sport growing up. I grew up in Michigan. I played on a Detroit travel team. I travel over like an hour and a half for practices to go practice down in Detroit because I was a small town kid from more in the upper state of Michigan, and I loved basketball. I will say though, it started getting pretty physical. Women's basketball can get pretty dirty, especially when you're a taller girl like myself. When you're down low in the post, from the elbowing to the hair pulling, I'm seeing girls dropping left and right, tearing ACLs, and I'm like, huh, the running up and down the court, the aggressiveness. I don't know if this is for me. And so I was introduced to volleyball, and all I had to do was go up, down, side to side. I got a net separating me from my opponents. I'm like, I think I might stick with this. So I ended up playing college volleyball, but loved playing basketball in those days. So I was on the varsity team in high school as a freshman, and was thinking about going the college route for it, but ended up taking a turn and going the volleyball route.
Listen, anybody that knows me, they know my love affair for volleyball, and especially for college women's volleyball. Like the action, the excitement, the way y'all stun on people. By the way, the stunting that goes on in volleyball, it's like every single time that you make a play, you're gonna let the other team know about it. It's like, oh no, that's a block.
It's for
Just in
sure
case you
a
were
high
wondering, that's a block. Or if you get an ace, it's a full-on dance routine going on. It's fantastic. I've always loved that about volleyball and the competitiveness. So you grew up a basketball girl. What was the first thing you remember about what brought you into the NCAA tournament?
what do you mean, like for
Like
like?
like what is your earliest recollection of the tournament, and what drew you personally into the NCAA tournament?
I would have to say UConn. Watching like the UConn women's basketball program and what they were doing there and just their winning success and hearing about how, women's basketball is taking over and just dominating, drawing that attention to the game. That's when I really got hooked. It was definitely when it came down to UConn and just when they started having their success. That's when I started paying attention to it, I would say. Really, for me growing up, though, it's funny. I was so caught up in playing the sports and traveling, I never really had time to sit down and watch. But I would definitely have to give a shout out to UConn women's basketball being one of those teams that really had me starting to pay attention to what was going on the college level.
Yeah, I think for me, what it was is that the NCAA tournament always seemed to happen right on the tail end of high school, or even your middle school youth basketball league, like
Yeah.
right before you went into travel ball. That March, that early March, you got to attach yourself to a team. Obviously, the brackets are what's made college basketball explode with the tournament because everybody feels invested.
Yeah.
Are you a one bracket person, or are you a two bracket person?
I just try to go one.
See, you know what? It's the reason why I love you. That's the reason why all of these 3 and 4 and 5 bracket people, and
I
I've
know.
got to keep these straight. I'm like, how do you have the time?
I know. I don't know how they do it. And honestly, from an emotional standpoint, one is enough for me. It's enough.
Absolutely, I can't be that involved. Um, And you mentioned something about UConn, and I wanted to get into that
Yeah.
because it's something that's really been bothering me. And this isn't a slight on UConn because UConn, they don't make their own schedule. But UConn was able to essentially host a home game
Yeah.
as a 2 seed versus the number 1 seed North Carolina State, a game that ended up going into overtimes, a fantastic basketball game, a great opportunity for a marquee matchup. And I think that it was almost cheapened because at the least, North Carolina State should have been afforded a neutral site to take on UConn as the number 1 seed. But the fact that they had to play UConn like right in Connecticut
Yeah.
as a 2 seed, like, do you think that they're missing the boat? The NCAA is missing the boat with the women's game, with trying to make sure that the popular teams end up in the Final Four every year.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, this definitely has been bringing a lot of uproar and attention to this when it comes to the seating and who plays where. This, for me, doesn't quite make sense. I think everyone kind of has that question mark popping up when it was announced. For me, when you think about it, it's always usually the higher seed has the advantage in some cases. And when you talk about UConn and Gino and what is going on there on their campus, to have to go and play there rather than a neutral site or, at the top seed, it definitely is like that's that's going to be a challenge. There's definitely an upper hand in that.
Absolutely, and I think the problem that I have with it is they can't even lie and say, well, this is just how the bracket fell,
Yeah,
because as the number 2 seed, understanding how as the number 2 seed, understanding how the women's game is gone, you see so much chalk happening. You had to know it was most likely going to be UConn versus NC State
yeah,
in the Elite Eight. And so putting UConn in a bracket that would allow them to play in Connecticut for a chance to go to the Final Four, that to me just says you wanted UConn to be there because you know that if UConn's there, more eyes come, more fans come, and it's all about the dollar as opposed to building the entire brand and allowing those teams that jump onto the scene, because we haven't heard a lot about NC State. This would have been a great opportunity to introduce the country to NC State basketball. And in, and instead they go down in an epic game. Paige McBuckets was Paige McBuckets once again, and now UConn is going to their 100 millionth, Final Four appearance in a row, and the excitement about it, I think, takes a dip because it's like, okay, well, we've seen that show before.
yeah, yeah.
I
No,
don't know.
definitely. No, and I mean that's kind of like where when you think about it back in the day when Gino and UConn were just starting to really bring on that spotlight. It all has to start from the bottom to build yourself up. And for NC State, I mean, this would have been the prime opportunity. It's all about helping these teams become a household name. But if you're always just focusing on one team and shining that spotlight specifically on one team, how are you going to build it up? So I definitely hear you out on that.
Yeah, South Carolina and UConn's going to take on Stanford, and that'll be
Mhm.
interesting. That'll be a great matchup. Obviously, South Carolina, the number 1 overall seed, is going to take on Louisville, and we get a chance for. I always said that when South Carolina lost to Kentucky in the SEC championship, it was the worst thing that happened to the women's game because they were going to be so motivated that they were just going to run roughshod over everybody in the tournament. And we've seen that play out. South Carolina has looked like the most dominant team in college basketball. Boys or girls, it doesn't even matter. They look like the class of college basketball, period, in. And you have to really respect that because South Carolina is kind of doing under Dawn Staley what Gino Auriemma in UConn did to Tennessee back when Pat Summitt was holding things down at the top of the college basketball landscape. So it's been fun to watch that happen. What do you think about this Louisville South Carolina matchup?
I think it's going to be great. I think it's going to be a test. I mean, I know that for the Gamecocks, they're a team that we cover all season long, obviously, in our geographic area. And so, for what Staley has been doing with her team, and just the amount of players, I mean, I could not even just give you one or two names. Really, that whole roster is just stacked with girls having double doubles and just putting on a huge performance. So when they go into this matchup now with Louisville, they're going to be going in though with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder because last year they fell in the Final Four and that stung. And they've been carrying that with them throughout this entire season, saying, "Hey, we have unfinished business to take care of." So I could see this being as definitely a heated matchup. But as for the Cardinals, this is a great opportunity for them to come in and take advantage of that situation, knowing it can be done. The Gamecocks can be taken down. It doesn't matter at what point in the season it can happen. And so they'll be thriving on that, I think, going in with motivation of knowing, like, hey, while this has been the number one team all season long, just because they have a number one in front of them doesn't mean that they're unstoppable.
Yeah, and Louisville's playing with house money because nobody thinks they're winning.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even people in Louisville's like, well, you guys got South Carolina. Good luck. Like all of the people who believe in Louisville, they're in that locker room. And so when you have that freedom to just be able to go out and not have the pressure of, oh man, you're expected to win or you have to win or this is a revenge tour, that's something that's really awesome for Louisville. I want to get back over to the men's side because I know I only have you for a small amount of time.
I know, I'm sorry.
More.
Yeah.
It's okay. Because this matchup of North Carolina and Duke, two blue bloods, two established entities, one coach coming in his first year on the job, another coach ending. Can you write anything better than this?
The amount of storylines for this matchup is insane. It is a laundry list of storylines that go into this. But I think one of my favorite ones is knowing that we have a rivalry in the Final Four that has never happened before. These teams have never met in the postseason. So it's going to make it such a unique atmosphere for these two. And it also, as you mentioned, just from the coaching aspects, there's so much storylines just within that, especially when you think back to the regular season when UNC spoiled Coach K's final home game.
Yeah, no, it's interesting too because Duke blew out North Carolina in the first matchup of the season. Then North Carolina comes back. Duke's thinking this is going to be a coronation of Coach K's last game in Cameron, and nope, it's over. Now both teams who were not expected to do a whole lot because of the way they were playing down the stretch get hot at the right time. They both run through the tournament only to end up here. Now, as a North Carolina fan, I must tell you,
okay,
the only way I believe this should end is with Duke losing to North Carolina, or they have to win it all.
Yeah.
You can't beat North Carolina and then lose to Kansas in the championship game. That messes the entire storyline up. As a writer, that's the way it should never play out that way. Either you win the championship or you lose right here to North Carolina, and we write the story as Coach K, final game, North Carolina got it done. That's obviously what I would prefer.
Of course.
But if they were to get it done, they've got to cut down the nets.
Oh, definitely. I mean, welcome to being a journalist. Listen, there's people that go into these games with storylines already written, articles ready to go, headlines typed up. And here's what athletic teams love to do. They love to ruin it all for you. You have these things in your mind thinking that's going to be perfect, and then it just doesn't even happen. So I don't even know what to expect going into this game. I totally hear you out on what you're saying of what would be the ideal situations and what's right and what's wrong. I really don't know what's going to happen Saturday. I mean, this is going to be an insane matchup. It's a blockbuster. And if you're a college basketball fan, and while you might not be a fan of either team, this is one that you just can't miss. You have to watch this.
Absolutely. And the other matchup, Kansas and Villanova,
yes.
it was in any other year, people would be like, oh my God, this is an epic matchup. Nobody's talking about Kansas Villanova.
That was another matchup.
Meanwhile, we're like these two juggernaut of coaches and these two juggernaut programs are going head to head for the right to play whoever wins North Carolina and Duke.
Yeah.
If you're a local affiliate in Durham right now, you're welcome. You literally, these things write themselves for the next 3, 4, 5 days. Even afterwards, you can still squeeze more juice out of it.
This will be bragging rights for years to come in that area. I mean, between those two teams. And for any reporter working in that area, prayers go out to them because my goodness, this has got to be a whirlwind having to cover both of these teams and having to stay neutral and to cover all the bases and to get with all the different storylines. I mean, my mind would just explode.
Yeah, no, there's no sleep going for them. No sleep. They need to be resting up as much as they can right now. Because when they hit probably like Thursday night, the sleep is over.
Yep.
It'll just be story after story after breaking news, after jump on this person's show and jump on this person's radio segment. It's going to be crazy. Amy, I know you've got to get out of here. I don't want to keep you any longer. Give me your Final Four predictions. You don't have any affiliation, so you're a Youper, so it's good. You can.
Yeah, okay, listen. For me personally, I'm rooting for the Gamecocks all the way. And I'm gonna side with you. I'm gonna be rooting for UNC all the way as well. I just think that of course the Lady Gamecocks, I respect what they've been doing all season long and what Staley has done for that program throughout the years. I would love to see them come out on top on this one, especially after what happened to them last season. I know just from being a former college athlete, the amount of emotion that goes into that, and to have being so close last year, these girls are going to be giving it their all coming this Friday. And then again, for the men's side, no disrespect to Villanova and Kansas and whatnot for that side, but I got to go all the way with UNC. I just think for them and what they've done, and for them to overcome the Peacocks, I mean, to get past those guys. They were scaring me.
Oh,
I mean, goodness. That's unbelievable. What that
they handled St. Peter's pretty early. I think that's what was a good thing. They got them off their game early, got a lead, and then from there, just natural talent took over, and UNC were able to prevail. Amy Zimmer, WJCL sports director. I know you're going out to cover some golf, so I know you have suntan. And I know you have bug spray.
No naps spray.
You gotta have the no naps. You gotta have the suntan. Make sure that you get a nice little even coat on you. Safe travels. Have fun out there, and we will talk to you soon. I appreciate it.
Of course. Thanks so much for having me. Hope to hop on here again with you, and hopefully when my deadline's not so strict. So it was a pleasure, and thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thank you again.